Okay, hello everyone. My name is Pasha. I'm going to be presenting. Wasim is going to facilitate my talk. Well, first of all, it's my pleasure to be here today, and thank you for inviting me. Well, first of all, it's my pleasure to talk about the topic that I'm really passionate about. Before I start, I'd like to apologize for my lack of computer science or machine learning engineering background. So you probably think that it makes me not the best person to speak on this topic, but as Winston Churchill said, no one pretends that democracy is all power and perfect, but it's all we have. Hopefully, Wasim will help me with technical details. All right, having that said, I'd like to proceed to my motivation to dig into this paper and to present it here today. I'm almost sure that you don't care about that, but Serena told me, quote unquote, it'll be nice. Yeah. That's why. 2 years ago, I got interested in the problem of replicating functions of human brain in silicon chip. Long story short, so from there I transitioned to somewhere on the verge of machine learning and neuroscience, and started with a bunch of guys interested in this topic. I started a meetup where we talk about artificial general intelligence, and that was basically the first paper that we reviewed. The reason for that is so at that time it seemed like it's a perfect combination of next level goal, which is a human level perception in machine learning model, and forefront deep learning tech. So yeah, let's dive into the meat. As you can see, authors study the problem of visual concept learning and visual reasoning. Given the input image, a human can instantaneously recognize objects in the scene. We also associate various visual concepts with object appearance. That includes colors, shapes, types of materials, and so on. The recognized visual concepts support our reasoning over the image. So as an example, to answer the simple question, what's the shape of the red object? It takes no time for a human, but that's basically the problem that authors are trying to solve. So what we do is we associate word red with the color property of the second object, and then answer the question by querying the shape of the second object. Beyond just answering questions, visual concept supports visual reasoning of various forms. For example, you could write captions to describe the image that you actually see. That there is a green cube behind the red sphere. We can also retrieve instances from the data set that are associated with specific concepts of interest. In this case, rubber spheres. You might ask who made these colorful pictures and came up with all these questions to them. That's why I suggest we move to the description of the data set that was used for this paper. So a number of visual question answering or VQA data sets were created to develop systems that can reason and answer questions about visual information. CLEVR contains 100,000 rendered images and about 1 million automatically generated questions, of which 850 are unique. Scenes are represented as collections of objects annotated with shape, size, color, material, and position on the ground plane. Each question in CLEVR is associated with a functional program that can be executed on an image's scene graph, yielding the answer to the question. Functional programs are built from simple basic functions that correspond to elementary operations of visual reasoning, such as querying. So the questions that come with each pictures are then translated into domain-specific language designed for the CLEVR VQA dataset. Below the picture, you can see the prior arts for visual reasoning in the visual question answering cases. A typical flavor of these models is to use an end-to-end neural architecture to predict the answer to the question. Yet, there are two things to be learned in this loop. So first, you have to learn concept, such as colors, shapes. And second, you have to have an ability to reason, such as counting, or you have to have ability to tell the positioning of different objects against each other. In such end-to-end design, concept learning and reasoning are entangled with each other, and which results in that the learned concept cannot be easily transferred to other tasks, such as image captioning and image in the instance retrieval. Oh, sorry. So there have been recent trials on incorporating explicit concepts of visual reasoning. The Neuro-Symbolic VQA framework proposed by another group uses a scene parsing subroutine to extract an abstract representation of images. It first detects all objects in the scene and extracts their attributes, such as color, shape, and all other. Meanwhile, it translates the language question into the logic program with a hierarchical layout. In this case, what's the shape of the red object? The generated program, together with the abstract scene representation, is sent to a symbolic program executor. So we start with the filter operation, which looks for an object of a red color. Then we proceed to the query, which gives us the answer sphere. During training, annotation for visual concepts and programs are needed. So that's for the previous work on NS VQA. So that's a previous paper. This restricts an application in real-world scenarios, where neither of concepts annotations for natural images or program annotations for natural language could be obtained. So, for example, in this case, with the image of 3 horses. So the idea in this paper is to jointly learn the visual concept and semantic parsing module for natural supervision, where basically no explicit human annotation is needed for both concepts and programs. Analogical to human learning, the perception model learns visual concepts based. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just curious. So it would, for this image, for example, it would filter animals, query grazing. Is it always sort of, it knows what to filter, what to query?
Yeah, the thing is, you'll learn it.
I'm asking ahead.
Yeah, you're asking a bit ahead, because all these concepts like grazing and animals, they are actually hard-coded in this paper. Yeah, so you actually learn them, but the concepts themselves are hard-coded.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so you first start with learning the concepts, and then you proceed to parsing new sentences. So let's start. Let's try to understand how it works step by step. So we first detect object in the scene and extract visual representation for each of the objects. They also use semantic parsers to translate the input question into symbolic program with hierarchical structure. Each of the concepts in the question, such as word red, is associated with a vector embedding. A Neuro-Symbolic Reasoning module takes visual representations and concept embeddings and parsed program as an input and gives an answer to the question, which is sphere. So here we have we basically have two parts of the problem, which is learning the concept and learning the program. We first start learning the concept because that is basically how authors approach training their machine learning model. We assume that the latent program has been recovered by the semantic parsing model. What it means is, so try to think that this program, filter, query, so right now it is fixed. So we basically run one trial per each program for the semantic parsing module. The perception module learns visual concepts based on the language description of the object being referred to. Starting from the first filter red operation, for each of the objects seen, they project its visual representation into a color space. The concept red also corresponds to a vector embedding in the color space. There it is. So the perception module learns visual concepts based on the, after that, they compare the cosine similarity between color of objects and the vector embeddings of red to classify those objects. In this case, the second object will be classified as red because it has more probability of being red because it is situated closer to the red concept in the color space.
Good question.
Yeah.
So I know that you coming up with the object representation. I think I understand. Use some connectionist approach to come up with the object representation.
Yeah.
Well, how do you differentiate the color? And you talk about color space. So are you creating two different embeddings, one for the shape and one for the color?
Yeah. So you create different. The representation of objects is given in a single vector, while representations of concepts is given in different vectors.
And both of them are done. Both of them are statistical, or one of them is symbolic. Any of them are acquired by a symbolic method, or?
No, they're all neural.
Yeah,
all neural representations.
Yeah, so you learned them.
Yeah, all learned.
But the set is selected.
Yes, fixed.
The fact that it is a cube is fixed.
Okay.
But
Yes.
the representation of cube is distributed.
Yeah, but you learn the representation.
Yeah. Think of it as a word embedding, right?
No, I hear you. I hear you. And would they receive different inputs or the same input? The same input, just two different neural nets. One for color and then one for shape.
Oh.
Is this correct?
So one for the visual representation, that's a separate neural net. For the color, you are trying to learn the representation of red, but then you also have this cosine similarity function between your visual representation and the color, and somehow you want red to be close to the concept red, and a red object, you want it to be close to the concept red. And so what you want to do is maximize the cosine similarity between both of them. And so you update the concept embedding to reflect that, the concept of red to reflect that, and you update the visual representation to reflect that. So that's how you...
So how many spaces are we talking about? How many spaces are there in total? So there is object...
Color space,
color.
shape space, positioning space.
Texture.
and texture. Yeah.
And all of them use neural nets, but they may originate from an image or a symbol, which could be the shape.
Oh, so visual is neural, but all of the other ones, they're just learned. Like, for example, how cube, sphere, cylinder, all of these are learned shapes.
Yeah, so you have basically the dictionary of all the shapes that you want to classify. So, for example, like in this case, four different colors, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm asking about the input now. So you have input for the visual representation. The input comes from the image. For the other spaces, they seem to come, like the input seem to be symbols, so like words.
Yeah, from the question. So
Yeah, from the
parse
question.
the question, and then they extract concepts from
Yeah, and the
question.
third input is a concept itself. And they have a dictionary of different concepts.
As we go.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So excuse me. So it's the visual representation part is a module, some kind of it's just like some kind of the visual.
Think of it as a vector.
Would you mind
And,
repeating the question?
so the question is visual representation a model?
It's a pre-trained.
Sorry? No.
No.
Well, the mask RCNN, like, they do train the mask
Are you
RCNN.
referring to the concept or to the?
No. It's some kind of part of the computer vision part. So some computer vision is a pre-trained
Yeah.
for the weight.
Yeah.
But this part is without pre-trained.
No, actually, like the part that extracts the first of all boundaries, and second, like the part that creates this vector representations of objects. These are pre-trained. So maskers, yeah, that's a bit ahead of. So we'll touch that further. Okay. Awesome. So they extract the shape. Once we have, once we classified the object, the color of the object, then we proceed to another program, which proceed to another part of the program, which is query, and they extract the shape representation of the second object. And compare it with the vector embedding of different shapes in dataset, so such as cube, sphere, and cylinder. Again, we compute the cosine similarity between the shape representation of second object and vector embeddings of different shapes to classify the shape. In this case, object will be classified as sphere. Yes, so to answer questions about how we extract the visual representation of the scene, so they use a pre-trained mask RCNN module. It is pre-trained on 4,000 CLEVR images to detect boundaries. The bounding box for each single object paired with the original image and are then sent to ResNet34 to extract the region-based and the image-based pictures respectively. Those are concatenated to represent each object. Here, the inclusion of the representation of the full scene is essential for the inference of relative attributes such as spatial position, like left, right. Relational concepts are classified between a pair of objects similarly, except, as I said before, they are concatenate the visual representation for both objects and their position on the scene. To make the execution differentiable with respect to the visual representations, they represent the intermediate result in a probabilistic manner. A set of objects is represented by a vector, as an attention mask over all objects in the scene, answering your question. Each element of the mask denotes the probability that the eth object of the scene belongs to the set. Yeah, sorry for that. In the neuro-symbolic reasoning process, all operations are executed based on the similarity between different objects, attributes, and concepts in the latent embedding space. Thus, the derived answer is fully differentiable with respect to the visual representation of the object, as well as the concept embedding. During training, the ground truth answer the ground truth answer to this question, in this case sphere, is used as a ground truth, and this right answer is used to backpropagate to the concept embeddings and the visual representation spaces.
Sorry, could you elaborate again? What's the
Sorry, can you ask in about 10 minutes? Sorry.
Yes, for sure.
Sorry. Go on.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I would like to elaborate a bit more on the curriculum learning, because here it will be very important to understand how this model was trained. So to facilitate the joint learning, authors draw inspiration from how children learn. The model starts learning object-based concepts by looking at simple scenes, such as such as what we've seen before. It then interprets referential expressions based on learned object-level concepts in order to learn relational concepts. Finally, it extends it to learn from complex scene and questions, such as this one. The training samples are heuristically split into 4 stages. So, whoa, what's happening? Yeah, so we were talking about the curriculum learning. By the way, my structure is a bit different to like what you guys originally have at ACE, because I will still have some material to explain, and after that we can proceed to a discussion. Okay? So the curriculum learning. So the training samples are heuristically split into 4 stages. So first, you learn object-level visual concept. Second, relational concept. Then you proceed to more complex question with perception modules fixed. And like the 4th stage is you jointly fine-tune all your modules. So for lesson 1, the maximum depth of the program is 3. For lesson 2, the maximum depth is 5. So I'm talking about the number of queries that you can have here in your question. And after all the lessons are done, the maximum depth of the program is 9.
So just to give one.
That was the break.
Just to give one clarification, if you go back,
yeah.
For lesson 1, program depth of 3 means you have the tree node, and then you want to filter the shape, and then of an object, and then you want to you want to filter out what's the red object, and then you want to figure out what's the shape. So root, query, filter. So that's how you get a depth of 3.
Is there, sorry I didn't lift my hand, but is this coming from somewhere, or did they come up with this filter query model? Is that from VQA?
Oh, there is a domain
Specific
the domain specific language.
Oh, it's coming from like grammar-based
VQA
parsing stuff.
from the CLEVR Dataset itself.
Yeah, but you mean the stages, right?
I mean the parsing stages, sort of, yeah. Like the grammar.
Yeah, so these are fixed. This
Not they're fixed. Did they come from something?
from like the list of like operations that you
In
can
CLEVR?
do using sorry?
In CLEVR?
No, they also do have a list of hard-coded like functions. For
Right,
example,
right.
query.
I guess what I'm trying to
CLEVR
say is that
Dataset also has those functions, but they came up with like their own interpretation of some of those functions because they didn't like them. Like for
So
example, filter.
They have the algorithm it's very specific algorithm.
Yeah,
They're just doing this over and over again. They're parsing through it.
I got that. I guess my question is why think about it as a filter at all? Right? Like, because they came up with it, that would be the answer. That's fine.
Because that's how the execution model
Yeah,
runs those commands. So,
I got
yeah.
that. We're good. Thank you.
Yeah. So, do you remember that we agreed that we fix the program of like this for this question? What's the shape of the red object? So the program was fixed, and the length of that program was 2. So once we backpropagate to visual representations and concept embeddings, we proceed to training our semantic parsing module. So the way it works is the following. During the semantic parsing, multiple candidate programs are sampled for the parser. So from the same question, you can come up with different variations of program. So initially, you can like it might be so the list of possible functions is only limited with the length with the depth of the program. And given that it is limited for lesson 1, lesson 2, you have this needed limitations in order to make your model trainable. So in this example, 2 candidate programs are sampled. They show the semantic interpretation for each of the program in the natural language. The semantic of the first program is what the shape of the red object, which is the correct one. The way they figure out if it is correct or not, they just run the trial and see if their execution module gives the right answer. If yes, they apply through reinforce algorithm, they reward this program with 1. Those programs that gave the negative answer, they reward them with 0. We'll dive into the algorithm more deeper later on. Yeah. So the semantic parser adopts an encoder-decoder architecture, which contains 4 neural modules. A bidirectional GRU module encoder, input encoder to encode an input of the question into a fixed length embedding. An operation decoder, opdecoder, that determines the operation tokens, such as filter, in the program based on the sentence embedding. The concept decoder that selects concept appeared in the input question. So as I said before, the concept decoder is actually hard-coded, and it extracts concepts from the question in a hard-coded fashion. So, like for example, these words red and the shape, this concept decoder module, it extracts them in a hard-coded manner. And the fourth neural module is an output encoder, which encodes the decoded operation and output the latent embedding for decoding next operation. So informally, we can we call this words we call like this words red and shape concept words. For a given question, the corresponding concept set, like both of them, red and shape, is comprised of all occurrences of the concept words in the question. So the set of concept words is known for the CLEVR dataset. That's why I previously said that they're hard-coded.
So just to give you a summary of algorithm 1, you get a representation of, so the question is input into the bidirectional GRU encoder. And so that's your F there in parse. And the CI is the set of concepts, as Pasha has mentioned. And so what you have there is you have an operation decoder, and so it takes in the representation that is output by the bidirectional GRU and tells you and gives you a probability distribution over the program operations, which is like query, filter, so on and so forth. Okay, so it gives you a probability distribution over which of these programs should be executed. And then if the program, for example, once you choose a program, if it requires a concept, for example, filter requires red, which is a concept, you would input the set of concepts to it, and then hope that the concept decoder learns how to couple these two together. And then in the end, you have a program input. So if it's not a function that takes in a concept, like for example, query or same or exist, then you have an output encoder that takes in the bidirectional GRU representation, the program operation that you have chosen, and the set of concepts. So, the encoder takes in the bidirectional GRU representation and the program operation, but then parse, which is the function in algorithm 1. You're gonna have to apply parse to it again, and so you should think of it as a recursive algorithm.
Yeah, so, and here is the, yeah, so basically each function opens a new one if it is required. So you build this, sequence of actions, and each action opens the new one if it is required to do so. Yeah.
So basically, we come up with like, I don't know, 10 possible kind of questions, and then here we just guess which of those categories.
Yeah,
right?
initially you come up with all the possible list of combinations of these.
So the combination, like way of asking, like this is behind this, or the yellow object behind the red shape, something like that. So we just select 10 different functions that represent those kind of questions, and then here we just come up with like a mapping between the questions. And
so you build the program out of functions. So those filters, same, exist, those are functions. So you build your program, and it is limited in size. So for example, initially you can only build the program with a length of 3. So you take all the possibilities of all of these like different combinations, and you try each one of them on your executional module. And if you get the correct answer, which is like probably, but ultimately you get it, it applies the reward to that particular combination of functions wrapped up in a program. So you can think of it like, to make it even more simple, I suggest we divide those 4 steps. So first you get, it encodes each word separately the first bidirectional GRU encodes each word except for the concepts. So the second the second GRU come up with the possible meanings for those words. Third GRU extracts the concepts, and so the fourth neural module just connects all these into and compiles the program. If it makes it simpler.
Yeah, the last one you were saying it's just a fully connected layer, or you're just using it as an analogy?
No, so the last one is the GRU cell. So two-layer GRU cell. Like not two-layer, but two separate GRU cells.
So
The reason for that is to explain this. So inside the function, you can have this function can call two other different functions, and that's a hard-coded limitation. You can call only two functions. That's why you have these two GRU cells to support that. Hope it.
no, it's good.
Yeah, awesome. So the input encoder first maps each word. Yeah, we touched that, so I suggest we just pass on that. So once the objects are recognized and program is compiled, we proceed to symbolic reasoning. So let's make a short. Let's revise everything that happened before. So first we trained the concept and visual concept embeddings and visual representations. Then we trained our semantic parsing module. So we explained how it works. So now we connect all that in a symbolic reasoning module. So can you see the, yeah, so here you have O, it stands for the visual representation of an object. Each object level concept, such as, for example, red, is associated with a vector embedding, VOC, and L1 normalized vector BOC of the same length as an attribute. Attribute is, for example, the shape. So BOC represents which attribute does this object level concept belongs to. So if we have red in our sentence, the BOC vector for this concept would be from the color space.
And it's V red right there.
I don't. Yeah. There
And then so that's the bias, and then there is also the vector embedding, which is V red there too.
Yeah, to classify the object as being red or not, we compute the consigned distance between two vectors. Y and T are scalar constants for scaling and shifting the values of similarities. By applying the classifier on all objects, we obtain a vector of length n. Similarly, such classification can be done for relational concepts, such as, for example, left, right. This will result in n by n matrix. It is called in domain-specific language. It is called rel classify left, and where rel classify left is the probability that object I is left of the object J. To classify whether two objects have the same attribute, like they used the second function. So basically, they have a separate function for different operations, and it is also listed in. It is also a part of this domain-specific, the domain-specific language.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Just that U was the visual representation of object I. What was
Yes.
U? Okay.
I don't see it from here.
So that can be the projection of, for example, the visual representation onto the color red.
So the encoded representation.
Yeah. So there is, for example, this filter. There is this filter operation, for example, and it could be like, I want to filter this object to be red, and for example, that's how you know that the probability of the object is red.
Okay. So, but the U of A was the encoded representation, though. That was what I was asking.
Yeah, of A, this is it means that it's a representation of red.
A as attribute,
Actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
color.
All of you need to speak up.
I just like why isn't there? I think I'm trying to understand the notation. So you know, super A. There is no R. There is no red for U, right? It seems to come from the object. So it's just a projection of the object, regardless of it being red or.
Yes, it's a project. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So they use the projection of the whole object, and then they like compare it to the concept embedding.
And that angle bracket is your dot product.
Cosine similarity.
Yeah, it's a process. Yeah, let's continue. So the optimization objective of a neuro-symbolic concept learner is composed of two parts. So the concept learning and language understanding. As mentioned earlier, the goal is to find the optimal parameters of theta v of the visual representation module and visual perception module comprised of ResNet34 and theta s of the semantic parsing module to maximize the likelihood of answering the question Q correctly. Awesome. So to tackle the optimization, yeah.
Do you mind just going back to the previous slide and maybe other people don't care about this as much, but just sort of highlighting what every variable means, if possible?
In the equation? Yeah, so theta stands for the weights of yeah, so this is so theta v is for ResNet. Theta s is used to calculate the reward of for the semantic parsing module, because it is trained using reinforce. It also theta v used for training the concept embeddings. So yeah, and everything else.
So it just tells you that given a scene, you want to retrieve the visual representations, and then you sort of want to execute a program on that visual representation. That is the high-level idea, and you just want to get the maximum reward out of all of this. And so you're trying to get the parameters that give you the maximum reward. So basically, you want to get the parameters that give you that maximize the probability of the correct program given a representation.
What the heck perceptions do here?
It's the visual part.
Oh, that's just visual network. The ResNet combined with the master CNN.
Yeah.
And P is the problem.
Is a
Parse.
The parse. The parse.
same thing.
Yeah, so to tackle the optimization in a non-smooth program space, they apply an off-policy program search process, the one that I described before. So an intuitive explanation of this off-policy search is that all possible programs of the given length are enumerated, executed on the visual representation, and those leading to the correct answers are found. So this basically closes the loop of concept learning and semantic parsing. In the Neuro-Symbolic Concept Learning framework, these two modules are jointly learned, first concept, then program, by only looking at images and reading paired questions and answers, no annotation. So these are results results of the experiments on CLEVR Dataset. So as you can see, they achieved. Yeah, sorry, I just didn't show the actual numbers. So they overperformed on a CLEVR Dataset all other benchmarks. And what is shown on this second diagram is so they used only 10% of the CLEVR Dataset training data. Wasim, are you concerned with something?
No. It's it's just that the accuracy there on 100% of the data is 99.2, but somehow the histogram looks like it's much greater than that. Anyway.
You probably look at 99.2. Yeah.
99.2.
That's probably 99.2. Anyway, so they used only 10% of the CLEVR dataset and trained their model, and even with 10%, they achieved 98.9 accuracy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The left chart, IEP, MAC, those are previous words? Is it?
Yeah, so those are enumerated on top.
Oh, yeah. And what was the last one? What was the best one? NSCL?
Neuro-Symbolic Concept Learning. So the one.
It's theirs.
Yeah,
it's theirs.
this one. Yeah.
So maybe you missed. Maybe you mentioned I missed. How is the reward determined? Is it like if it's accurate, it's 1, and if it's the same word is 1 and it's not, it's 0?
Yeah. So they have the confusion. So this training of the semantic parser module is a bit confusing because first they in the paper they explain that they use those gradients from this high-level function, which we just talked about. But then they say that we just use this, we just enumerate all the possible variants, and we apply a reward of 1 for each program that gives the right answer. And then it updates the weights for this of this semantic parsing module.
Can I just, what I found confusing in the paper was where it says no annotations, but in fact, like the simplest question where it says, what is the color of the sphere?
Yeah.
Or what is the color of the block? Where's it getting the answer for that, the correct answer? Because it's a paired question, right? So it's the answer is red, so isn't that like a type of annotation, really?
Yeah, that's what they learn. No. That's so they only have
how does it learn
the embeddings for each of the concepts. So they have an embedding space for color red, let's say.
Okay.
But they don't know what's. But they also train this embeddings because it initially it's just a random vector.
Okay.
And they train their model to perceive red as red. And the way they do it, so first you definitely have to have at least some ground to stand on in terms of the program, right? Because you have to figure out the program first.
The curriculum learning where I'm starting with something simple and I say reward 1,
yes.
reward 0. This is some.
Yeah,
okay.
You start with something simple with all possible variations of something simple, and then from there you learn more advanced concepts.
Even when you go to more complicated things, they constrain themselves to a depth of 9, so you can still enumerate all possible programs.
Okay. It's really like a type of annotation because it's just indirect. I'm saying this is red.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
part
Yes,
of
they
the discussion.
in the constraint, yeah.
Because all over they say no annotation, but it's really not, I thought,
Yeah, so the main achievement of this paper is basically that previously all other approaches had to use 700,000 labels to train the semantic parser, to train the semantic parser, basically. So what they achieved, they don't have to pre-train this module. They can train it on the go while training the visual perception and concept embedding. They also experimented to a new reasoning testbed, which is Minecraft world. So this table summarizes the results compared to the previous version of not this model, but similar approach, Neuro-Symbolic VQA. So they compared their approach with the previous one. The difference is the same. To train the NSVQA, 700,000 of labels were used to train the semantic parsing module. But the most interesting part here is the experiments on the VQS dataset. So VQS is a subset of VQA. It contains questions that can be visually grounded. Each question is associated with multiple image regions annotated by humans as necessary for the question. So as you can see, the neuro-symbolic concept learning approach didn't even achieve the same accuracy as the previous one and more lightweight MAC approach. And the reason for that, and the reason for that is covered in those constraints that they built. So the one that you were referring to as annotations. So these are basically constraints that allowed them to achieve this performance on the VQA dataset. So you cannot build the same. So as you can see, here you have the question is like, what's the color of the fire hydrant? So you basically have to have all these different concepts of fire hydrant and horses and whatever it is in the VQA data set, and you have to have a separate concept embeddings for each one of them, and it makes training for this application very pretty much impossible in this setting. I mean, even though they applied the same constraints with curriculum learning and limiting their number of the functions possible within the program, but still they didn't achieve the accuracy even compared to MAC.
So what's the difference between this one and, so that S, is it scenarios or is it just small VQS? And what's the difference? Like, it seems very similar, right, to the VQA?
Yes, but it's like
the shapes are more.
The thing with the VQA data set is you have a very limited number of concepts, and here the number of concepts is huge.
So they still train. They still train on this data set.
Yes.
And test.
Yes. The thing is, they don't have the implementation of their semantic parser in GitHub. So, and like basically no explanation on how they use the same approach for the VQS dataset. So we only can assume that the approach was similar.
Except that they would extract the programs and concepts using what's it called? Syntactic dependency parser. instead of like so for CLEVR it was handcrafted rules, but here you have a syntactic dependency parser.
And where does that parser come from? Is it pre-trained?
Yeah, no,
or
it's
is it
it comes from other work. Yeah,
Is it a statistical pre-trained? Okay.
Yeah, pre-trained.
So that's already more complex, right?
Yeah.
So that error could propagate into their downstream model.
Yeah, same thing with the localization module, right? Like MASCAR CNN may be able to localize quite a bit of these objects, but not everything.
Yeah.
So there is already at least 2 sources of error.
Yeah.
And
It seems to be more complex also. A guy having a pen, there's a very limited number of pixels, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to localize it, it's not that easy. And also the concept of having something on someone.
Yeah, so you have to have a more broader list of different concepts and combinations. Like the concept to have something on you is a relational concept, and yeah, so you have to have domain-specific rules for each one of these specific scenarios. And that makes this problem so hard to solve. Yeah, so the application is quite straightforward. Same as with shapes and colors, but in a real-world scenarios. So for example, the VQA setting also has the function count, so it can count the number of shapes of number of objects of certain shape. Here they count zebras. And as you can see, the number of possible embeddings that you need to have in order to get better accuracy on this data set is huge. So, yeah, and again.
Question. I have 2 questions backed up online. Can I ask now?
Yeah.
One more?
One more slide?
Yeah.
Ask your question.
More. I have
Ask
2
your
more.
question.
Okay. The first question: do you have a table 9 on your slides?
table what?
Table 9.
Table 9.
I don't know what table 9 is.
Let me see what the table 9 is.
It's all of the implementations of the operations in
Okay,
CLEVR.
so the question is, how do they learn the position of the objects? And Alex, she referred to table 9. It's not listed on operators in table 9.
Let me answer the first one. So the way they learn the position of the object, so first they, so as I said, they have the pre-trained MASCAR CNN model that basically provides the boundaries of objects. So then they send these objects together with the whole picture into the ResNet model. And they build this representation of an object based on these two inputs. After that, in order to find the spatial relationship between 2 objects, they concatenate 2 representations of objects, and that's how they learn the spatial relations between 2 objects.
There's also a function called relate, and that takes the scene and left or right, and so it takes in this relationship concept.
Just 2 directions and left and right. That's it.
Guys,
Or
speak
top,
up.
down.
Can't hear you.
In front and behind as well.
Front, behind, left and right.
Yeah, remind everybody to
Oh yeah, left,
Yeah.
front, yeah, behind, yeah.
I don't have table 9 in the presentation, but I can.
Okay.
We can take that offline.
All right.
Yeah.
So okay. Second question
So
is.
here it is. Here it is.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. I think she was just trying to find the
Yeah, it's
operator.
relate, right there.
Okay. I think we've seen the answer to that.
Yeah, number 3, like
Number
the third,
three.
the
Okay.
third row. Sorry.
Okay. Second question is about embedding space. Is there a unique embedding space for each of the attributes, or
for each of the concepts.
Attribute, I suppose.
Attributes. So the difference between attribute is shape, and the concept is like rectangular or sphere. So those are concepts. So you have different embeddings for different concepts. But you also have a vector for, so that BOC vector is basically represents the attribute.
I assume they are distinct hard-coded. Is that correct?
Sorry?
I didn't think they nested embedding. I was just thinking, okay, I assume they are distinct hard-coded. Is that correct?
The embeddings?
Yes.
No, they're learned.
They're not?
Yeah, they are learned.
What is hard-coded is only think of it as a space for an embedding. So
okay.
It is hard-coded, but the embedding itself is learned.
Okay.
Okay. So we can now discuss. So we have multiple questions to discuss. First one is the application of curriculum learning in the real-world setting, and it's a good analogy that curriculum learning so you can think of it as some sort of annotation, because basically you heuristically limit and you provide guidance for your model on how to train. So anyone has some thoughts on that?
So without using curriculum learning, it would have not been possible to do what they have done, right? Because they have, they had to pre-train them as CLEVR and then they had to learn the embeddings, and then they had to learn the semantic parser. And so these were done in stages, and and you can't just do the whole thing end to end.
Yeah, I believe they tried to do it all at once and said it simply didn't work.
Yeah, they did. And
if you skip one, it doesn't work. Not just.
Do you actually think that curriculum learning in its standard form is required, or do you just think that you need to do pre-training on each of the sub-steps?
No. So you just have to apply curriculum learning.
No.
You don't have to have.
I understand. But what I'm trying to say is, what curriculum learning is it means there's a strict ordering over the complexity of the child problem.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is, could you actually just remove that and instead take a random subset of your data, pre-train the first step, next take a random subset of your data?
That's the thing. With curriculum learning, you basically, so that's the way of thinking about the constraints. So you constrain your model in a certain manner. And you that's another source of input into your model that provides certain biases, and that's how you convey those biases into your model.
But what I'm saying is that actually necessary, or could you have just done pre-training? And it's an empirical question altogether.
I think
not
in this case, curriculum learning just fit the whole thing very nicely, right? Because there is no way you could learn concept embeddings without having very, very simple questions. For example,
I think this is, your question goes to the essence of why this research is even done, like Tenenbaum's work at MIT. And the reality is you don't have to do this. You can get if you have enough samples, you can do what you're saying. However, his big thing is if you look at a 2-year-old child, and the 2-year-old child does not need, I remember I learned to drive in Montreal, 5 hours, then I went for driving tests and I passed. My mother freaked out, came back with license, what you're driving. You look at a self-driving car, what does it need? 1 billion hours of driving? And the reason is a 2-year-old child, learns, they don't need that much data. And I think that, these people are in cognitive science, not computer science, and they're actually asking, what, humans don't need all this data to train. And hence, and he's showing a model here where you don't really need that much data, and it works.
there are a few asterisks.
Well, it doesn't. He's trying to make it work.
Yeah. I come from a cognitive science background, so I'm actually very amenable to the thing, but I'm not sold yet. I'm not convinced that curriculum learning is better. And though I agree with you that I wouldn't put a new driver on a F1 racetrack, you're still given a lot of signal right out the gate, regardless of what your teaching circumstances are, right? And it's infinitely more than these. Curriculum learning often means stupidly simple, and then we'll make it what a child could do eventually, right? And so I'm still not 100. Anyway, I'm almost playing devil's advocate, but I'm just saying I'm not sold that curriculum learning is absolutely required. Yeah. You haven't convinced me.
I would add that it would work if curriculum learning allowed a better generalization. So, for example, if you learn the concept of a shape, and then you can learn different shapes, that would be
more convincing.
Yeah, more convincing. Because here curriculum learning is only constrain your model in order to allow it to train with this limited amount of data. So no generalization. Because for example, take a kid. If you show I don't know, fork, chances are high that kid will also recognize the spoon, that the spoon has the similar functionality, right? So that's the ability to generalize concepts. So here you don't have it. You just use it as a limitation in order to train this same concept. Yeah.
For the example you give, the man has a pen in the pocket.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the image. It is completely you cannot even
Speak
barely.
up a little bit, sorry.
So man has a pen in the pocket. Does it know because of the visual embedding, or in a pocket there's a pen? That's why it knows there's a pen. Is it recognizing this as a pen, or okay, there's an object in the pocket. That's why it should be a pen.
That's there is no such explanation in the paper, but from what I think is that they have this concept of embedding of a pen, and the mask RCNN model somehow recognized another object on that. So that's not actually a mask RCNN.
All the localizations, and then in the end figure out the answer.
Yeah, but
so it just happens that this localization has a pen in it.
But if there was anything else, it would still say it's a pen.
Well, no, you don't know.
No, so I would say that the output of mask RCNN for that particular picture is much more different boundaries, but after that, after going through the ResNet, they only limit it to the objects, to the concept that this model knew before, such as pen, and it recognized this pen.
The only reason I asked is because of the occlusion in the image, because it's only half of a pen is visible.
Yeah,
it's okay. These models can get lucky.
Can you do a recap on what loss or signal it is using other than the reward? Like what part is pre-trained on what loss function? Like what signal is it using to do this for the training?
For the semantic parser?
Yeah, the whole pipeline. Like what is it? What is the supervising?
Yeah.
Other than the sparse reward at the end. So object detector is pre-trained.
Yeah.
Is there anything else?
So the pre-trained thing is the mask RCNN. So the part of the visual representation module is the mask RCNN.
Okay.
So it's here. It is pre-trained on 4,000 CLEVR images.
Okay.
After that, we have the ResNet 34, which is pre-trained on the ImageNet. Those are pre-trained. Everything else, like object representations, are learned. Concept embeddings are learned, but you have the list of these concepts.
Okay.
Semantic parser is trained as well, and this module is basically like cherry on the cake, which controls everything, and so it takes it takes the functions from the program, so from here. It runs those functions over the objects and embeddings.
Okay.
And provides an answer.
Okay.
And from here you get the gradients to update these modules, to update concept embedding space, and from here as well you get the reward for the reinforce algorithm.
So all three are trained on reinforce.
No,
semantic parser
only
is trained
semantic
on
parser.
reinforce.
Because all of these are probabilities, but that one you discretely choose which.
Oh, that one's discrete. Oh, the other ones are you can bet probably. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So you have a resident and you have a mask RCNN, right? You mentioned mask RCNN is pre-trained. Is your resident also pre-trained, or you train it?
It is pre-trained on ImageNet.
But then you fine
C4
tune it
or
in the
something?
end.
Yeah.
ImageNet. You
Yeah,
mentioned ImageNet.
they also tried non-pre-trained ImageNet dataset, as far as I remember, but the accuracy for shapes concepts decreased like a lot. So you can use and they also speculated that trained ImageNet, trained ResNet like learns shapes better than non-pre-trained.
Because you gotta know it's a pen when you want to do the cosine between.
Well, I would say that you have to at least have this like notion of a shape in order to learn a shape, you know?
You just said that the neuro-symbolic reasoning, that's like the cherry on the cake, but I'm when I read the paper, to me, that's actually the cake. The fact that it's differentiable. I mean, if I had this, I don't know much about self-driving cars, but I assume they're not using differentiable computers to actually at the end decide which way to turn the wheel. That's differentiable, which means everything's trainable.
Well, I would say that the actual cherry is the fact that it is differentiable end to end. So even though we still have like some models that are pre-trained, for example, like the biggest concern is mask RCNN model, because it is pre-trained on the same data set. So that's the concern. But still, all system is differentiable end to end. So that's the cherry.
Okay, which is a big deal.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. So the VQA, NS VQA was also differentiable for the visual representation and for the concept embedding space. But it was not different. It was, but still it. So yeah, we have previously before this paper, there was also a model NS VQA that was differentiable, but it required the pre-training of the semantic parser. Yes. So the fact that they don't need any pre-training on the CLEVR dataset makes this approach better than before.
Another clarification question, if I may. You have a loss over there in neuro-symbolic, and are you really backpropping to your RL? Is your RL a deep RL, or is just vanilla RL?
It's just a GRU and.
That works just sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then what was the reinforced part?
It's just reinforcing reinforcing.
Oh, and in cost function.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those programs are just GRUs built by GRUs.
Do you have the equation for so when you add the reward by any chance?
Sorry?
Do you have the equation for when you add the reward by any chance? I think that was
yes.
the one that I asked about, the U, right?
No. U is just.
Yeah, let me show you. No, not this one.
Yeah.
That one.
Oh, okay.
Neuro-Symbolic Reasoning.
The gradients on top of the
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. So what is R is your reward?
Yes. So if the program gives you the correct answer, that's 1. If the program gives you the wrong answer, it's 0.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And then it updates. Yeah, we have another discussion question. yeah, we touched that Mascar CNN. Yeah, it is pre-trained. Like maybe someone has thoughts how to avoid pre-training the Mascar CNN module, and we can come up with another paper.
Yeah, that's actually one of the issues that I have with this paper. So they say that, oh, if we train on 10% of the data, we get 98.9% accuracy. But in reality, I mean, come on, you train on 10% of the data when you have a pre-trained Mascar CNN, which is already trained on that data set, right? And so you cannot fairly compare it to other approaches like MAC or TBD, transparency by design, that used ImageNet pre-trained ResNet 101 networks. And so yeah, you just can't sort of.
What is the baseline exactly? So like why I would imagine that they would, aside from all the function complexity there, just train the vanilla with the cosine of your question space and the visual representation. I want to see that as the baseline and see how actually those functions, those recursive things contribute to it. So I think I need a baseline to see how much of it is the transfer learning part and how much of it is their algorithm.
Yeah.
Just echoing your voice, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, authors suggest another discussion point, which is what's the the setting is, what's the purpose? What purpose does the thing on the person's head serve, and which is shade, and you have to. So that's not a visual concept. It has nothing to do with a visual representation. It's a functional, yeah. So. Looking at this current neuro-symbolic concept learning, I guess that it's too early to ask that sort of questions because we didn't figure out how to build the visual concepts yet.
Well, something like a shade it's more based on the action, and so it's almost more what Racine used to do. But it's more based on the action than it is based on the thing itself. Because in theory, I could use this chair as a shade, right? It's what I'm doing with the chair that matters. Even that is vaguely reminiscent of an umbrella, but he's strapped it to his head. So that's already very strange in a general context, right?
Well, yeah, I agree that you can extract, so you can train the model to understand that if there is some notion of a shade, and I guess that.
No, I'm saying the opposite actually. What I'm saying is that you need to be able to describe actions, and then once you could describe actions, then you could possibly infer that. Otherwise, yeah, you could just arbitrarily label that as a shade and try to enumerate every possible instantiation of shade. But I think that's I think that's a very computationally standard style of solution.
I'm not sure actions are enough, to be honest.
It's so that's my main concern. So I shared my motivation for this paper, and
but that's not a concern. I'll tell you the answer right now. You have here's the thing. Unless you do it by association and you have infinite possibilities, because you get it in the real world, there's so many permutations, which you won't have it. The answer is no. A neural network can never answer this question. I predict it'll never be able to answer it. No animal can do it. We're the only ones who can do it. You need causality to do it.
Yes, so that's...
Neural networks are not capable of causality, and they will never, ever do it.
That is a very, very strong claim.
It's a very strong
claim. I disagree with it strongly.
Well, I actually agree in the sense that we need absolutely different kind of representation of information
represent something different.
Yes.
Yes. I don't know if you necessarily need a different type of representation. You need to represent something different.
A convolutional neural net will never answer that question.
Not if you just train it on images. But maybe sequences of images could do it. I don't know. Right?
Yeah, so for me, the value of this paper is, as I said, so that this paper had a bigger goal, bigger than the most of current researchers have. like the human level perception. But at the same time, it showed the limitations of deep learning approach, because we can see that it's not a scalable approach. You need a different model that won't have different spaces to encode the concepts, to encode actions, and we will have to come up with a model that can actually encode programs and concepts within the same space and connect them in that space. And that's the kind of like representation that I'm referring to.
But I would argue that's a limitation of the current work, not of deep learning, because that's how they framed the problem. Because there are all of these other approaches.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, where you don't need this program, where you don't need to learn a program or anything like the Mac.
Well, if we have another paper to review, let's do it.
So let's take the rest of the discussion offline, and let's thank our speaker, Pasha.
Thank you. Thank you.